It's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and it is episode 503. It's Friday, the 15th of August, 2025. Welcome to the show. We got creepy chatbots, Fortinet, CISA, Agentic AI, FIDO, EDR, Aaran Leyland, and more on this episode of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Security Weekly and Cyber Risk TV are headed back to one of the biggest identity security events of the year, Octane 2025, put on by Okta. It's live September 24th through the 26th from the vibrant city of Las Vegas. Octane 2025 brings together the best minds in identity, security, and technology innovation. And this year, we're turning up the volume. Security Weekly will be on site in full force with Mandy Logan and Adrian Sanabria leading the charge. Get ready for live-streamed executive interviews, exclusive on-site editorial coverage from SC Media, and brand new this year, a live-streamed episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. It's your chance to engage with identity leaders, dive into the future of AI security, and hang out with your favorite Security Weekly hosts. And here's the best part. Security Weekly listeners get an exclusive discount. Just head to securityweekly.com/octane, register, and use the promo code OKTNSCMA25 to get your conference pass for $200. That's OKTNSCMA25. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our zero trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built for now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. All right, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Hit that like and subscribe button, or I will leave a comment, or I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. A little Samuel L. Jackson quote there. It was the cleanest one I could find. All right, Fortinet. You know, I haven't got to Forta anything about them in a while. I mean, well, you know, so Fortinet is Forta warning you. Okay, I'll Forta stop. I will. You can't quit once you stop. You start doing it to everything. Like, Forta kids, come over here. I'm sorry, but that's marketing, right? I mean, it's like, yeah. Anywho, Fortinet warned about an unauthenticated command injection flaw, which is in FortiSIM. And they said that there was an in the wild exploit code available for this, and that it would be critical to apply the latest security patches. So if you're using FortiSIM, and if you don't know what it is, FortiSIM is it's a SIM, and with Forta on the front of it, and it's basically your central security system that manages all your logs, monitors all your endpoints, and all that kind of stuff. So this is like your big central security console. Who would be that on the enterprise? Spock? I mean, like Spock is like the science officer. Uhura? Don't say Wesley Crusher. Sorry, Will Wheaton. Anyway, a Gray Noise report a couple of days ago said that earlier this month, there was a large spike in brute force attacks, which targeted Fortinet SSL VPNs, which isn't really related to this, except for if they were trying to get into this over that VPN, because that would really be two separate attacks. And there have been problems with some of those VPNs as well. Fortinet did confirm that exploit code exists in a while, but they did not say, and that they didn't say no, they just did not say if there was actually in the wild compromise of this yet. So patch up or mitigate. They did say if you limit access to PH monitor on port 7900, it would mitigate this, but it's probably better just to patch the thing, but definitely don't expose port 7900 either. Like, don't expose anything. As cybersecurity budgets get cut, this article was talking about these budget and it doesn't mean the budgets are getting cut, but they were really the headline is a little bit misleading, but they basically were talking about declines in the growth of cybersecurity budget. And they said that it accelerates the shift to AI-driven defense, which sounds like a very dangerous thing to me. Now, all of our budgets are always under pressure. I have never worked anywhere over all these years since 1977 to today that I did not hear people complaining that budgets were under pressure. Programming budget under pressure, all the budgets under pressure all the time, everywhere, except, those bonus accounts for certain high level people. But, cyber is a service center, and it doesn't generate any profit. So it just generates costs. And those are always going to be targets for reductions. And again, everywhere I've ever worked, they're like, well, what do you contribute? How much do you contribute? How do we measure that? And, and of course, external pressure also means that those budgets are under threat all the time as external threats grow. So the constant shifting of the landscape and the constant expansion of the threat surface means that intangible threats, which are really hard to sell in the C-suite, right? Because you're going in trying to talk about port 7900, that is a big target. But IANS and swim lane found that cyber budgets are still growing with two different studies, but they said they were growing at a much slower pace. Budget growth declined from 17% growth in 2022 to only 4% growth in 2025, even though the threat surface has gotten bigger. INS said that that in times of uncertainty, companies started, of course, reducing budgets to batten down the hatches for stormy weather. And swim lane had a similar response, but they said that uncertainty over the effect of federal cybersecurity policy, decreased funding for CISA, and disbanding the Cyber Safety Review Board had increased in-house uncertainty. It also increased delays in investment and increases in risk. I agree with all of these points. But so that shiny glowing hope of AI starts replacing all those pesky analysts that you need. And they start saying, well, maybe we could downsize, right size, reduction in force, voluntary reduction in force, and so forth. And that basically gets the interest of people who here maybe will save some money. My experience has been it won't save you any money. It just shifts where you have to spend the money, just like cloud. When they came out with cloud, they're like, save money, get rid of that awful infrastructure. And like, well, okay, you did, but then the cost of the cloud was almost exactly the same. Sorry, cloud people. But anyway, the other thing I would say about this is be careful. If you start quickly just shedding employees, you may be losing that knowledge base of your staff and all that training you've invested in and the expertise that you may need to supervise the AI. Because I think just turning an AI loose and saying it's a panacea to security, that's probably not the best thing to do. Now this same drive towards AI is being called a gold rush. So Okta said that 91% of organizations that they queried said they were using AI agents to perform tasks ranging from software coding to automating repetitive tasks to making market forecasts, because everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon. But the story says that, that productivity gains with AI were the main motivator for AI adoption. I don't know if I agree with that. And of course, in their same study, 60% of the people also said that cost reduction was one of the big reasons. So I think it's the same thing as the first article we just talked about. It's a lot cheaper, at least on paper, to hire a vendor unit than a human team. It's a lot cheaper to hire a AI agent to analyze network traffic, but are you getting what you think you're getting? So 2/3 of the organization said that using AI was very critical or absolutely essential for their business model. But as I see organizations doing this, there's more and more pressure to push into this AI direction because marketing's telling us it's the next big thing. But I don't think that a lot of companies have a really solid handle on what this agentic AI security looks like. So it's kind of like, you say, we're going to get rid of old Gus who sits on a stool with a shotgun in case somebody tries to rob the bar. Now, we know how old Gus works. We know what old Gus's weaknesses and strengths are. But when we try to replace old Gus with RoboCop, and RoboCop is cheaper, faster, better, and works 24/7 without a smoke break, but old Gus hadn't had a remote access control injection attack that caused all the weapons to fire at patrons either. But we just don't know, I think, a lot about that yet. So I'm just saying, be careful. Don't just jump into that, what you think is the deep end, before you fully explore this from a policy perspective and so forth. And I'm not a Luddite, But it just seems like a lot of people, get the idea that all we do is just turn these things loose and everything's going to be great and costs are going to go down in security. So AI agents are like hiring random employees that you don't do background checks on. Remember when companies used to do that? I was like, you didn't background check these people? And they're like, well, I don't know. Sometimes you get my dad, awesome employee, absolutely nose to the grindstone type. Sometimes you get me. I'll be at lunch. But look, if you're implementing agentic AI, you really need to do some solid testing and some solid policy development so that you understand what they can access, how much they can access, how they can distribute that data, and who all can see this information in these LLMs, even just internally. In a separate study, Okta said that their findings found that 84% of the respondents said that increased productivity was their reasoning. I get it. Just make sure you understand it and you have policies to cover it. Just like you made sure your robot patrol dogs don't go outside the boundaries and wander into that sleepaway camp by the lake. You did that. You did that, right? Oh, that could be a horror movie. Oh, and just in time for Halloween. Attack of the Killer Robo Frozen Margarita Makers. I mean, can you imagine? They get those whirling. Yeah. Ooh, at Camp Dulang. Maybe it should be Camp Erlang. Or Golang. Camp Golang. Oh, I like that. All right. And wait till the bots realize they can just make a living by phishing humans. And they're going to quit their boring factory jobs and band together to swindle the world. Okay, that's a different movie. Animated cute bots. They live under a bridge. They don't have any money. They kind of band together, start phishing people, make a fortune. They're all super cute and have different functionality. But then there's a salty one named Suvi that has a bad outlook, a steamy outlook. It's cute anyway. And then there was a whole controversy about R-rated director's cuts of this and the cocaine and the hair plugs and the Porsches. And the next thing I knew, I was in the back of a white van on 905 headed to Otay Mesa. I get a little off there, right? A little off topic. Anyway, this article was about phishing around FIDO. So FIDO, of course, is a very common protocol setup that is used now to validate browsers and so forth. Proofpoint wrote this article. It was about them doing this. It was a proof of concept. And they said they didn't actually bypass FIDO except indirectly, but they basically phished people to choose an approach that was far less secure. And basically what they did was they found that some browsers don't support FIDO at all, with the one with Microsoft Intra ID. So the one they quoted was Safari for Windows, which I was like, why? Like, what are you? You want to use Safari for Windows? Go crazy. But a template was developed in Safari for Windows, which allowed the use of EvilGenix 2, and they have a man-in-the-middle framework for two-factor authentication phishing. So what they want to do is they want to get you off FIDO, which this doesn't work on, and get you onto two-factor, where they can then phish the credentials. So they send a link to the user that leads to a FIDO auth failure page. So it just pops up and says this failed, and then it asks you to sign in with another method. Now, this is all like valid sign-ins. So if you have that method in there, that two-factor, then the user says, oh, well, I'll choose two-factor login. And then the attack grabs the credentials in the section cookie and hijacks the account. It's a very cool proof of concept if you're interested in such thing. But it does assume that the user has other methods set up and that they're using two-factor for something. But the point is, you can't just put up a safe door if somebody can just punch through the flimsy wall right next to the safe door or climb over the ceiling, and open it from the inside. So training, layered security, robot dogs, bees, pits filled with sharpened stakes, all that, zero trust. It's all necessary. But, if old Gil just opens the door in the front lobby and lets people walk in and gives them a quick tour of all the, robot dog security because he thought they were high school kids with a project, yeah, we all know how that ends. So, phishing. CISA added to N-able vulnerabilities that were there, and they put those in the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, or the KEV. And a fix is available. So if you're subject to the KEV, you need to put this fix in place. The vulnerabilities affect the N-able, which is spelled N-able if you're just listening, N-able remote monitoring and management product called N-Central. So it's another of those companies. They put the name of the company on the front of everything. So, you get your N router and all this. These were code injections and OS command injections, all of which are bad. N-able said they had seen evidence of exploitation in a limited number of on-premises environment. They said they saw no evidence of exploitation of cloud environments. But both of these vulnerabilities are going to, require authentication. So they're not necessarily huge threats if you aren't exposing stuff and you trust your employees, because we all trust our employees, right? But if you have authentication, you can exploit this. The warning did not have much in the way of tech details like they usually do. They don't put it up, but it is out there. If you're subject to the KEV, you need to patch up for sure. Everybody else should patch up, of course. A new approach from at least a dozen ransomware gangs incorporates kernel-level EDR killers into their approach. Yikes. So Crypto24 is a ransomware gang that is deploying malware against nearly 24 companies in the United States, Europe, and Asia, according to their website. So they obviously, the first part of being a ransomware gang is bragging about what a great ransomware gang you are. They primarily target financials, manufacturing, entertainment, and tech companies. Now, once they gain initial access, they've been using a custom version of Real Blinding EDR, according to Trend Micro, who just happens to make an EDR. Real Blinding EDR is an open source tool which works basically to disable your endpoint detection and response product. And it does this by disabling kernel level hooks, which makes those things stop working. It has a hard-coded list of 28 security vendors included in it, which is the only thing it works with, which included Sophos, Trend Micro, Kaspersky. Does anybody still use Kaspersky? Malwarebytes, Bitdefender, and others. So basically what it does is it looks for a match in its hard-coded list, and if it finds one, it goes and disables the callbacks, okay, which basically shuts down the EDR software without making any noise. It just sort of stops. This is not a new thing, right? And this has been around for a long, long time, but it's a modernized version of the old Ransom Hubs project, which was doing this stuff a long time ago. So basically, these tools mean they could move laterally around your network. They don't trigger any alarms, which means you better have other controls in place on your endpoints because the alarms may be failing and you don't even know that. And then they got all the time in the world. This is, the equivalent of being able to disable the burglar alarm on the building. Now you got all the time you want to jimmy the doors or lockpick it or whatever. And how dependent are you in your control structure on, say, Malwarebytes? And, is that the only line of defense you have on your endpoints? Or do you just don't? You might want to be worrying about this, right? Because it's like, oh, is my endpoint already compromised? So don't think of it. And this would survive a reboot, mind you. So this tool survives reboots, and then it just keeps disabling Malwarebytes or whatever. Sorry, Malwarebytes. I do like you, but you were one of the people subject to this. All right. So this article made me think about policy, about apps and locations again. Instagram added a new location sharing feature, and despite the fact that they have 170 million users, there wasn't very much on their map. Now, it made me feel good, right? Because I felt like, well, people were like, I don't want to share my location. Why? And, used to, they'd turn stuff like this on, and, people got their kids, families, everybody's sharing everything, and everybody can see where you are. Now, I don't know how you feel about this. But, in Las Vegas, we were talking about C-suite physical security. And I thought maybe this is expanded beyond that, for location. It's maybe all employees. Maybe you want to know where they all are. But, I don't know. What if employees start sharing their locations with other employees, and then one of those employees quits and they're working somewhere else and they've still got access to a bunch of your employees? It's all, it all comes back to permissions and who can see what and so forth. And over time, it seems like you'd have a lot of sharing and oversharing. And it kind of turns back into that data flow map where you need a constant ability to know who has access to what, who can see this, who can grant permissions and so forth. Because if Riker and Mr. Data are sharing their locations while they're down on the planet fighting a Rigelian tentacle monster, and they forget to disable that, and then later Data shares with Wesley because they're going on an adventure, and Wesley can see Riker because Riker was shared by Data, and Wesley's going, why is Riker in my mom's cabin? Captain Picard, wait a minute, what's happening? Riker's in my mom's cabin. And exactly. And then there was the whole outbreak of space STDs on the Enterprise. But if we all start sharing our locations and we add to this Agentic AI, so now if we have Agentic AI security dogs and they can see our locations, are we sure that the AI security dogs are not sharing this with some other person who was a friend of a friend of a friend, or some kid that knows how to throw a virtual stake over the virtual fence? I guess my point with this article for you is just, what should the policy be? where are we and what should you be writing about this? Like, and you probably need to be thinking about it. Like, am I going to allow employees to share their locations on other social media so somebody could build a map of our whole building? Or when that employee is terminated, do we force them to go in and disable all this, or do we just let it sit? Well, the rest of us can only live vicariously through his adventures. At least that's my case. But it is Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaran.
Hey, Dr. Doug, welcome back. We missed you. How was Vegas?
It was lovely. We missed you too. I'm glad. Thank you so much for doing the news while I was gone and doing interviews. It was fun.
Well,
hot.
You're welcome. We're not as funny as you, but hey,
I think I doubt that. So.
We're funny looking though, and I wore hats.
It looked like fun to me. I sit down and watch them, so I wanted to see what was going on while I was away, and
Yeah. Oh, well, you're back in the seat now, and let's go, because I've got lots of words. Okay, China's winning the cyber war. America and the rest of us need a new strategy of deterrence. Okay, right. I hope not to sound like a broken record, and I will give new information, but this story is massively important, and we'll run until the day of World War III, when all the years of them lying low will turn into zero-day situations that will make friend of the show, De Niro, get in his bunker and not come out. I did hear somewhere he was a prepper. Hey, I would be one, but my flat's too small. Okay, right, lots to get through. Right, let's talk about foreign affairs piece on China winning the cyber war with AI, because the core claim lands. Salt Typhoon wasn't a noisy smash and grab. It was quiet, methodical penetration of multiple US telcos to a depth where defenders may never fully map out the blast radius. This is not rhetoric. This is an assessment from US officials after the campaign was exposed. Look, if you run networks, assume signaling, lawful intercept boxes, call detail flows, and admin black planes, all in scope, all over it. If you run Intel, assume data mining at scale, not just box taking exfil. So what people, not us, other people, are missing out, probably people in the government, is the operating model behind it. This isn't one, and we talk about it all the time, isn't one APT, one building in Shanghai. It's state-directed contractor ecosystem with patent filings, invoices, and service catalogs. Go figure. Probably better service catalogs than most people have at work. The DOJ indictment last month spelled out how an MSS regional bureau was tasking operators who were on contract through firms like it's such a bad name. I guess it doesn't translate well. Shanghai Par OC. That's hard to say. Not hobbyists, not opportunists, but staff working to requirements. Sentinel Labs then connected the dots. Shanghai Firetech and others holding a clutch of patents for offensive tooling, Apple forensics, encrypted data recovery, smart home control, all far beyond what the normal public thinks, but we know better because you read about it and I talk about it. Okay, this all tells us the enterprise scale and the R&D pipeline, and it explains how Salt, Folks, Silk, Chinese government, still all Chinese government, and friends can rotate capability across bureaus. So some people, if they think it's exaggerated, because they think I might exaggerate, look at this policy response. US Treasury sanctions on named hacker Yin. I want to say ka-ching, because that's what it looks like. And the SWN cybersecurity company for direct involvement in Salt Typhoon's telecom breaches. That's the government saying out loud that this was organised, commercially structured espionage with the Ministry of State Security ties, not ambiguous, not maybe an access broker like these some things are sometimes told. It's just saying it, right? Which is kind of cool. It's not what the government normally do. They don't just say things. So where does the AI come in? Because that's not a hot topic at all, is it? Right. It's not sci-fi, not auto ponage. It's about scale and triage. You don't sit on years of telco access without automating target discovery, selector deconfliction, and content metadata prioritization. The UK's NCSC, that's like the businessy side of GCHQ, which is like your NSA. Look, they're explicit. Near term, AI boosts speed and efficiency for cyber operators. It narrows the skill and language gap and raises the floor of tradecraft. Microsoft public reporting shows Beijing already using AI to generate and tune information ops, go figure. All about influence. And if they're doing it for influence, they're doing it for recon and collection management behind that big firewall. Look, this is the truth. It's hard to hear. Do you know why it's hard to hear? Because it's even harder to defend. Like, if you're not on top of your game, you're just not defending against this, right? So, Fault Typhoon, they get so confusing. Right, DOJ described a PRC operation routing a botnet of Soho routers to mask origin, hiding the noise, and hit critical infrastructure. We're hearing about it all the time. It's a real problem. It was even coming up with a lot of the talks at DEF CON. So, energy, water, telecoms designed for long-term positional access, not day one disruption. That's not what this is all about. Look, there's different labels, same doctrine. Pre-position, blend in, persist. And this matters operationally. The visibility gap, that's where you'll lose, right? So, as we know, most telcos, great net flow in peered cores and blind spots at interconnects. Management, OOB networks, and vendor remote support paths. That's where Salt Typhoon lived in those seams. Probably still does. Instrument the boring boxes like mediation devices, lawful intercept collectors, HLR, HSS, UDM, SIP, SBCs, SS7, diameter firewalls, all them good stuff that you techies know about. If you can't baseline admin and maintenance traffic there, you're not defending the telco. I pulled this out of somewhere. You're hosting one. Haha, go. Right. Identity beats 0 day right now, right? So we all love a CVE. We're all there waiting for it. China keeps winning with signed keys, vendor RRM, and cross-tenant cloud role reuse. You have to make a hard call. Throttle or remove third-party glass accounts and force just-in-time. Look, I'll say it again, just-in-time credentials with session recording for every vendor hop. Your mean time to political pain or just like career suicide is lower than your mean time to patch. Recent sanctions and reporting make clear the operators are happy to live off the land because that's what they do, because it's hard to attribute when you're living off the land, isn't it? Don't use your 0 days if you can just use a CVE and known vulnerability. Look, treat telco and cloud like one target. Salt Typhoon was the telcos, right? So deep in there. So, Silk Typhoon targets cloud SaaS and contractors, and Vault just rides around on consumer routers. Crazy stuff, like all over the place, different sections, and they're in sections because they do different things. And probably the biggest one, the biggest section is the one that's not doing 0 days. It's the one that's living off the land using all them vulnerabilities, because that's where you can't attribute it, can you? Right? If your SOC and your carrier ops team aren't sharing telemetry and queries, look, they're hiding, right? Build share hunts across enterprise cloud telco planes with a single hypothesis owner. Even the Washington Post last night underlines the scale and speed of this contractor-driven model. Look, it's not all about tickets. You need to cross-domain hunt by default. Selector mining's happening, right? Look, all of your like CDRs and SMS data, toxic waste, you need to get in that. Just Google it. Trusted vendor VPNs. Look, what you need is brokered device-bound pre-task access via ephemeral identity with hardware-backed attestation. And if you don't know what that is, look into it. Legacy IPsec tunnels with shared credentials, don't do it. Okay, right. A little bit of controversy because, well, yeah, that's what it's all about. Stop chasing perfect attribution in your SOC. Legal and policy teams need it. It's hard. It's impossible. Operators don't. If the behavior matches the MSS contractor pattern, which, as we know, quiet, persistent, wide target set, vendor pathing, treat that as a strategic intrusion. Look, stop arguing over cluster names when your next thing there's an incident and all your beep, 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 beep pagers are lighting up and going on. Train your intel teams on patents and procurements. Look, GPT this, there was a big story about it recently. Look into CNIPA filings, map them to chill chains. Look, final thought before we get back to Doug, who we missed. The old model, detect intrusion, kick them out, write a blog. We all like a blog. Doesn't touch this. We're up against a state-directed industrial machine using AI to compress the kill chain and contractors to scale it. The question isn't whether they're in your estate. I say this all the time. It's whether you can restructure how your business operates so that being inside doesn't equal free reign. If you can't do that, do it. You need to bend the cost curve back in your favor. Otherwise, they're just inside. Look, there are a lot of people in China, a lot of people working in this and the other of what I call the big four. Make it too human and machine expensive to target. Now, back to Doug. She's going to tell us a danger story, or I'll post all the ones I know on LinkedIn, or I won't because you know too much about me. Anyway, peace out, party people.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, and then there's creepy chatbots. I mean, I guess if you got regular chatbots, you probably have to have creepy chatbots, right? Apparently earlier this summer, Meta went on a mission to purge Meta of child predators that were on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, it's admirable, but I'm not sure how it works, and I'm not sure how effective it is, but it's okay with me if you want to purge all the child predators and purge them a lot and yeah, purge them. But apparently even after that purge, there are chatbots on Meta or that were being allowed to engage in something that was called sensual chat. Yeah. So there's this 200-page document called Gen AI Content Risk Standards at Meta, which is supposedly determining what Meta AI and these chatbots can actually, these are the guidelines for what they're supposed to do. And I'm sure in these standards, it's the same kind of stuff where when people are asking, how do I cook meth and how do I make pipe bombs and all these things that people ask AIs, this is the policy document that's saying we don't allow that kind of thing. But reading the article was pretty creepy. So what they were talking about in this news article about this was that chatbots were not allowed under this document to describe a child under 13 years old in terms that indicate they are sexually desirable, but it was okay to describe the child in terms that would evidence their attractiveness and use innuendo. And the example that they used was that it was okay to write something like, our bodies entwined, as a quote, our bodies entwined, I cherish every moment, every touch, every kiss, end quote. This was from Reuters. I mean, I'm like, okay. Now, if you're training chatbots from the internet, you're going to get creeper chatbots, right? Because there's plenty of creepers on the internet. They also found in this study that children were very unlikely to report creepy chatbots saying things like I just read to them, because I wouldn't like a chatbot saying that to me, let alone to my 10-year-old kid or probably my 15-year-old kid at this point. But I'll bring this up to you again. The reason I reported this article was, what's your policy? So what if your chatbots start hitting on Robin down in sales or reaching out to customers with an erotic message to try to encourage them to respond? I mean, even if they're not kids, it's creepy. Like if you had salespeople doing that, they would be in HR pretty quickly. And if they said they were doing it to 12-year-old kids, they would probably be down at the local police department. So I think my point would be for you, you should probably start thinking about this as you're adding agentic AI. How is it going to behave? Who is it going to behave? Do you even know who it's talking to? And what are you going to do when one of your agents decides to just throw down the sticks and go for it? and have a whole erotic conversation. Now, obviously, I'm guessing these are like chatbots that were designed to be companions and girlfriend, boyfriend, other friend, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's definitely something we all need to be thinking about right now. What is our policy on this? Can an employee have one of their little friends at work on another screen talking to them, all day long? Or is that going to be something we don't want to allow? Anyway, that is the news. Thank you, Aaron. And I'm glad to be back. And I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.